My name is Jerry Henry, and I am the president of H2R Market Research. We are a research company that specializes in travel and tourism and delivering consumer insights in this market space, and not too coincidentally, that is our topic today, consumer insights, advancing our approach to better understand what makes our visitors tick. Mark Twain once said that it ain't what you don't know that gets into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And, you know, after doing our jobs for many years, I find that myself, and I think a whole bunch of us, are waking up to the fact that things that we knew for a fact just aren't true today. And the world's changing, and it is changing fast. J. Walker Smith, the founder of the chairman of the Futures Company, recently said that they've been monitoring change in consumer behavior for the past 30, 35 years, but they've seen more variance in the last 5 than in all that time. And just a couple years ago, the New York Times said they had believed that there had been more change in the last 10 years than in all recorded history. And I don't know if that's necessarily true or not, but what I do know is that we've had a lot of change in our lives over the last 5 years. And even though it may be a cliche, it really is a fact. And as a result, we have a lot of consumers out there that are very stressed. And frankly, why wouldn't they be? You know, they've come through a period that many lost their jobs or were underemployed. They may have been underwater on their homes. They've encountered rising heat bills, gas bills, and what have you. And frankly, a bunch of us are still doing jobs now that people had left, and so we're doing the jobs of 2 or 3. Oops. Back to 1. Yeah. During that time, the media landscape has also exploded quite a bit, which means we have a variety of new media to learn how to master. It also means we're bombarded with more messages from a variety of places all the time. Consumers, in fact, have an unprecedented number of choices today. They've got media choices, product choices, entertainment choices, and frankly, it gets a little overwhelming. But keep doing that. So what's up? There we go. Fortunately, we have a variety of new tools to help us navigate our lives. And these new tools are helpful, kind of like the iPhones or what have you. They help us filter through all the change that's going on, but then at the same time, they're new things that we have to learn about the phones, and it's probably no surprise that about 50% of us don't use all the bells and whistles that come with those. So as a result, we're finding that old business models that we've used all of our lives aren't exactly working like they used to. The market's fragmented, and we're not getting the same behavior that we had before. So mass channels aren't generating the same kind of awareness that they did for us 5 or 6 years ago. Visitor guides don't perform the same way and have in fact been repurposed by their users. And we've seen a pretty wholesale flight to digital and social and pretty much every avenue. We can't assume that we understand our customers. I don't know if you recognize this gentleman. This is Ron Johnson, who had been at Apple and took over JCPenney's a few years ago. He was with Penney's for 2 years, and he did a few remarkable things, but most of what was remarkable were bad in that he assumed he understood the Penney's brand better than Penney's customers. And during his tenure, the company lost $2 billion over that 2-year period, and as a result, Ron's no longer with them. And that really the customer is the one that makes all of the important decisions in our lives, and they're the ones we have to keep track of. Frankly, change has thrown the entire marketing world into chaos. I think research is tough and has evolved a lot over the last 5 or 6 years as we've gotten into consumer insights and a whole lot of other methodologies. But the reality is I can think of no other job that has changed and is as difficult as is the marketer's job today. They have so many different channels. And the reality is, certainly from our work, I found that what works for one destination doesn't work for another destination at all. And what works for that original destination may not work for them in 6 months. And so things are constantly changing, largely because we have so darn many channels that customers are tuning in today. And they're influenced across all these multiple touch points. And so we still have, you know, telephones and signage and direct mail and print and radio and television. But we also have to deal with websites and email and blogs and podcasts and mobile and social. It's everywhere. So that instead of just reaching our brand in a handful of ways today, consumers now can impact our brands and be influenced by our brands in a multitude of touch points. And as a result, the consumer decision journey has evolved to what McKinsey shows as this complex color model, if you will, on the right. If you go back 10 years ago, business schools were still teaching the old advertising pyramid. You remember that? The whole, we've got to generate the awareness, and once you get them aware, we have to move them down and get them interested, and if they're interested, we build comprehension, and we narrow that down, and we build desire, and ultimately action. But today, McKinsey says that only accounts for about 30% of all decision processes. And in fact, it's moved to the cylinder, which is essentially just, I've got experience with it, I like the product, I go back and buy, and I do no research whatsoever, or the spindle, which is the other oblong thing out there on the left, which indicates that people today, because they have so many resources, will start with a handful of products or a handful of destinations in mind when they begin to do their search, but once they get online and start talking to people and start gathering information, their consideration set actually grows for a while before they ultimately narrow it down. Today, marketing is everyone's responsibility. Because there are so many different channels and so many different touch points with which consumers are being influenced, it doesn't matter where you are in the organization or what your job is, virtually everyone is impacting that customer experience and therefore impacting the brand. As a result, we're all marketers today. Some destinations, heck, some brands are struggling to keep up with all the change that we've seen over the past 5 or 6 years. And I think we all know that if you keep doing the same things, you're going to get the same results. But the fact is, that's really not even true anymore. Our market space is moving so fast that if we keep doing the same things, I don't think we can actually expect that our market share and our results are going to stay the same. I think we're going to find they're going to continue to drift downward. So it's really not much of an option of trying to keep doing things the same way we always had. I think we need a bigger boat. We need a new approach. And I believe that comes in the form of consumer insights. It's an idea that other industries, especially like the Procters and Gambles of the world and consumer packaged goods, have been using for the past 10 or 15 years. I know when I first heard the word consumer insight, and this would have been probably 5 or 6 years ago, I kept hearing it over and over. I'd hear it at conferences, I'd read it in books. And initially, I thought it was just talking about the fact that you do the research and you're looking for insights within that. It seemed to all make sense. It was a while before I realized it was more of a noun. It was more of a way of doing things. It's more of a process that is different from just research. It's a bigger umbrella. Consumer insight is enlightening knowledge about the consumer. It's a lightning rod. It's seeing below the surface and understanding what makes your visitors tick. It's breaking them into niches and starting to understand your visitors like you might a close friend. That you kind of understand why they buy some things or they don't buy others, not because you have a great description of them, but because you truly know what is important to them in their lives. So some examples of consumer insights would be like McDonald's coming up with a value meal originally, or introducing breakfast. You know, when I was a kid, McDonald's opened around noon, and now breakfast is their biggest meal. So that was a eureka moment for McDonald's. Oil of Olay, which realized that they could sell upscale women's skincare in mass merchant shelves. And certainly the iPhone and everything about Apple is built on new insights that are game changers in our world. And as recently as the Super Bowl, the Budweiser commercial, where they're recognizing that in order to sell a low involvement decision like beer, it's less about talking about the beer and it's more about getting Budweiser on everybody's lips, talking about, did you see that ad? Oh. And then lastly, if you haven't been following Disney, it's a great case study to look up their My Magic bands and how they're tracking information on individual visitors so that they can deliver more customized and personal experiences to guests as they go through their parks. All of these are helping businesses either gather information or they are the eureka moment that them understand a lot deeper than they would have before. Traditional market research is great, and it's still very much used. It does a good job of describing what is. It would be an example of your target market being women that are aged 25 to 54, that are college educated, married, and have children aged 6 to 16. Describes it really well. Matter of fact, it's great for buying media. Wonderful for buying media. Lousy for helping you truly understand what makes the visitor tick. Not that great for helping in the messaging. Not great at all for understanding the motivations that get them off the sofa. Not great at all at helping you understand the niches that really drive their behavior. Market research is certainly what I grew up with, was presenting the data and delivering a mountain of statistics. And today, I think reports are still graded by weight, but when I was growing up and coming through school, it's the heavier the report, the better. You deliver it and let people wade through it. And I guess back then, some people had some time. I don't know if anybody ever really loved it. But today, we're so stressed out, we're so busy, we're so in need of decisions quickly that no one has time to read through that kind of report. We really want to skip to the end and say, so what's it mean to me? So as a result, one of the problems with traditional research is it often leaves clients asking, so what? What am I going to do with it? How am I going to use it? How's it going to make life any different for me? How am I going to get a return on investment? And so that leads us to what do you do? How is consumer insights a whole lot different? And one of the ways, it's a much larger toolbox in that it uses a lot of new methodologies that didn't really exist that many years ago. But these new methodologies help us connect with consumers in new ways, at new touch points, so that we can learn new things. One of those things is ethnography, and I imagine everybody on the call knows exactly what ethnography is. It's just simply monitoring consumer behavior. It's watching the consumer behave and talking to them afterward and asking a few questions. What might be a new twist on ethnography, though, would be digital ethnography, something we started doing a few years ago, where we do online video diaries of respondents. And they go out and actually record themselves making the purchase or engaging in the use of the product. And then they would take a video of themselves from their phone and talk about that purchase experience and respond to a few preset questions that we had in there. We typically follow up with an online in-depth interview so that we could ask them about specific elements of their purchase, but it gives you a first-hand, front-of-the-line view of what that purchase experience is really like, which frequently uncovers things that you might not have known that exist. So, if in the travel business, it might be checking into a hotel, or it might be experiencing a museum, or it could be purchasing food and beverage, or it could be purchasing merchandise. Wherever you have issues or that you need to understand your customers a little bit better, it's certainly an idea that wouldn't have existed prior to the iPhone and everybody having smartphones. When I first started using it, I thought there's no way in the world that people would use it. If they did, no one over 50 would do it. And I found that I was very, very wrong. It's amazing how many people are willing to do it, and how much that they will talk and reveal about themselves in these kinds of studies. Qualitative research is another critical part of consumer insight. Always been there. It's been around for a very long time, where we ask people to drive across town and come to a facility and sit around a table with 8 to 10 of their closest friends, well, maybe not closest friends, but talk about things that are really important to them. An interesting twist on that might be online focus groups, which we started doing a few years ago. We started doing it because we were having trouble with a couple clients of picking the specific markets that we needed to go to that would really represent everyone. And so, it's the old method is you get in the car and you drive to one city and you do your focus group, maybe 2 or 3, and then you get in the car and you take the whole group to the next city where you do it, and possibly even a third city, so that you got a variety of input from a variety of different geographic markets. In online focus groups, you can recruit folks from across geographies all at the same time. The other nice thing is they then can participate from their home or office, which is typically in the travel world where they're making most of their decisions anyway, because most travel destinations are researched online. So you can get the multiple geographies and you get a little bit better mindset. And then from a pragmatic standpoint, it also tends to save time and money and gets the insights to you quicker. Another channel or another approach used by consumer insights is empirical data. Now this has been around for a long time. This would be like the transactional data that you may get from your customers, whether it's off Google Analytics or if you have a gated property, it may be people coming from the gate, or if you're a destination, it may be information from your welcome centers or visitor guides for what you've sent out. But it's gathering all the information that you have from customers and putting it in one database so that you can start to understand travel patterns and behavioral patterns and what have you. A great example of this you've probably heard is the Target example, where the Target database folks had actually recognized and predicted that a young lady was pregnant before her father had found out. And the story goes on that the father was a little upset when Target started mailing pregnancy materials and what have you to this. What happened turned out to be a teenager. And so anyway, father a little upset, but the moral of the story is Target was able to determine that this man's daughter was pregnant before he was by simply monitoring what kinds of products that she was purchasing and when and what combinations. The idea is to be able to use data about your own customers so that you can predict their behavior in ways that you couldn't have done before. And another avenue, and this is the last one I'm going to talk about in just different types of methodologies, because methodology is not the most interesting thing in the world, but it's kind of fun to see what's new and happening out there. This one's called social listening. It's kind of like an unstructured focus group. It's going out to sites that you maybe like Yelp or TripAdvisor or Facebook or really any social media site where people come together and they're talking about their experiences in travel destinations. It's unstructured in that you really can't control what they're talking about, but you can be a fly on the wall and listen in and see what folks are saying about your destination or the properties in your destination or your property. The key is just to identify the social media sites that are of most interest that you wanted to evaluate. And in many of these, you not only get the comments, but they'll have ratings. And so the idea is to identify trends and quantify the qualitative commentary in it, and then memorialize those overarching thoughts and comments. We've done this for a variety of clients that are just trying to get a better understanding of what their brand is. The other thing I'd point out is that folks that do use travel blogs or travel review sites also tend to be some of the biggest influencers in the travel market as well. And then lastly is quantitative research, which we've had for a long time. But in the consumer insights realm, rather than jumping to quantitative first, you tend to get a lot better insight if you start out with some amount of qualitative research to get with the customer to help you understand what some of those closed-ended options actually should be, and help you make sure you've actually identified all of the salient topics that really impact their behavior. When you just rush to quantitative up front, sometimes you'll overlook what turns out to be some of the key elements that actually impact them that you hadn't thought of. Another example in this case is need state segmentation, which is a form of market segmentation designed to identify why people do what they do. What is the need that drove them to a particular destination or a particular property. So consumer insights includes traditional market research, but it tends to include a lot of newer, different, more holistic methodologies so that we're exploring the consumer's needs and their reactions across a variety of different ways instead of just one or two. The consumer's insights also a completely different way of thinking really about research. In one way, it looks forward instead of just backwards. It does both, but the fact is it spends a fair amount of its time looking forward to try to define what is driving behavior so that we can get a better take and a better ability to predict future outcomes. So in looking forward, it does include more qualitative, more ethnography, open-ended questions, and getting more at the attitudes, opinions, and preferences of people rather than just measuring past behavior. Don't get me wrong, measuring past behavior is incredibly important, but if that's all you're doing, you may not be spending enough time looking out the front windshield. Measuring that past behavior typically is done with the quantitative research or transactions, performance, closed-ended questions, measurements of history like satisfaction or conversion rates or return on investment, and those kinds of things. Consumer insight also uses a variety of methodologies, which we've talked about. It's the whole idea of having a larger toolbox so that you can use a holistic approach instead of just using one method and trying to identify one moment of truth. While the moment of truth in any given transaction is important, customers evolve over time, and their opinion about your brand changes over time from a variety of channels with which they impact, of which they come into connection with your brand. It's not just immediately after they visited a destination or what have you. Insight specialists are also collaborative thought partners. And the idea here is, a good insight specialist should be like family. They should be a partner that really understands the client's business needs and work with them to try to identify solutions. It's like another person on your team that understands the operational issues, understands the challenges you're facing, understands the need that drove them to do any particular research project. Whereas traditional research is seen as, here's the problem, and the research person would then come in, deliver a report, respond as questions arise, but it's more of project-based. They come in and then they leave, and they're really not an ongoing part of the team, so they're really not involved in the business strategy per se. Consumer insights is about partnering with these insight specialists so they are a part of the team and of the business strategy. The reports in consumer insights work is also quite a bit different than traditional research, and that they tend to tell a compelling story, and they tend to be far more concise. The implication to this issue is that you don't want to have to make people really think. If you have to make people think when they're reading the presentation or hearing the presentation, then you probably already lost them. People today need to be fed the information quick, simple bites, so they can immediately go on and make the decisions that are actually going to drive business for them. And so the idea is the delivery of the presentation, if it can be made in a story form, it tends to be stickier. It's something that they're more likely to remember over time. And like any good story, it would have a beginning, a middle, an end. It may feature antagonists, like a problem that you're trying to solve, and protagonists, the heroes or problem solvers. But the idea is when you can have contrast in the story, or in our case, the presentation, it tends to make people remember the results a little bit better. Insight specialists also tend to have a seat at the executive table, something that has not been the case in years past. The reason, or the implication here, is that insight specialists help drive the conversation. They're the business drivers. They're the ones looking at the challenge and helping the chief marketing officers and all the marketing people throughout the organization identify the problems and solve them on an ongoing basis. Whereas research, traditional research, certainly that I grew up in, were order takers. They were a service provider, and they're a place that when you have a problem, then you would call the research vendor and have them come in and try to answer that particular issue, and then they go away. Yeah, but they're not necessarily working with you all the time to help drive business, to identify growth opportunities, or to solve issues that you may have in the organization. Leading companies are also far more likely to share insights throughout the organization. One of my first jobs, I worked for a fairly large company in the research department, and we did quite a bit of research, but the executives wanted to make sure that all of those results came just to them, and only they were allowed to see or review it. No one outside of an executive VP was ever to see the information, and the reasoning was if those other people were to have that information and then go to a competitor, then all of a sudden the competitor would have their insights. So, which is a little backwards because the very people that are working for you need all of the information to actually serve the customers better. But that was 30 years ago. The idea today is to improve and make strides forward, because it really does take a village. We need everyone throughout all of our organizations singing from the same hymnal, working on the same goals, using the same strategies, and understanding the same customers. So when we get the information, the last thing we want to do today is have the information sit on a shelf. Consumer insights is about gathering the information and then making sure everyone from the CEO down to the newest associate, just right out of school, have the insights, they understand the customer so that they can use them on an ongoing basis to deliver better products and services. Higher level mathematics can help provide deeper insights in consumer insights. Excuse me, in consumer insights. This might be correlation analysis, regression analysis, factor analysis, cluster analysis. And before you hang up your phone and say, okay, I've had enough of this, I'm only going to talk about the bits and pieces that I think are a little bit more actionable here. Correlation helps identify choice drivers, and a good example of that may be looking at a wide variety of satisfaction elements and running the correlation of each one of those with intent to return to your destination or intent to visit your destination, and identifying which levels of satisfaction are most highly correlated with intent to visit or a high net promoter score. And the reason for that is that would be the areas of satisfaction you absolutely positively want to make sure that you're getting high scores in, because those are most critically aligned with someone saying, yeah, I'm more likely to come back. Those things that are not very correlated with intent to return probably aren't as important of a satisfaction metric. And another area I found this to be important is when I'm trying to understand why visitors aren't coming back, and we're measuring the hurdles that prevent, or barriers that prevent them from coming back to a destination, using this in the flip side in measuring reasons that I'm not going to come back relative to their intent to return helps you get past the excuses and get to real explanations that are at the core of the challenge that makes them want to go someplace else. Cluster analysis, and I'm not going to go deep in this, but it is the best method for doing market segmentation, getting away from demographic segments like families and adults or young and old or rich and poor. Nothing wrong with those. They can be very useful, but cluster analysis enables you to look at psychographic preferences and how people think, and cluster by what's important to them or by their need, why some people choose to visit a destination versus other. It enables you to cluster those the like thinking together instead of by simple demographics and what have you. So it enables you to have homogeneous groups, but not necessarily just based off demographic segments. Regression is taking a variety of metrics and understanding how they are related mathematically so that you can predict future values. An example of this that we did with one client who had just opened up at Christmas, and it was an outdoor theme park that started opening for Christmas, and obviously during that time of year you can have weather like we're having today, or it can just get cold, and for them we found that the relationship between outdoor temperature and their actual visitation was about 150 visits per day for every 1 degree of temperature, which enabled them to budget better, at least as weeks ahead in terms of staffing to project when attendance is going to rise and fall. The benefits of a consumer-centric strategy, and that's really what we're talking about here, is when you are evolving to use greater consumer insights, you really are an organization that decided that you need to put the consumer at the center of all of your strategies, as opposed to being operational or financially driven, which certainly the attractions industry had been for many years, and it's evolving outward. But some of the benefits are improved profitability, and that you have a better understanding for why things either work or that they don't work. It helps build share of wallet, or today share of watch or clock, which may be even more important than share of wallet. It also helps you get higher price points for the products and services that you're offering. If you're able to align a specific service with a specific need, it tends to have greater value than when it doesn't. It helps identify growth opportunities, and it helps identify the highest profit travelers, or what we tend to call our North Star customers. These are folks that not only come back, but also that spend the most and are brand advocates for the destination. A consumer-centric strategy also helps improve trial and repeatability, helps build brand awareness, helps position the destination in the most compelling way, Amazing how many clients we have that have been selling the destinations the exact same way for many, many years without ever setting back and looking to determine if there are other segments of customers that are visiting the destination for a completely different reason or way. This type of work also helps identify areas of satisfaction that drive intent to return, very similar to what I was talking about with the choice drivers and correlation analysis. And also it helps find and eradicate pain points. Because travelers are so stressed out today, when they are finally able to get away, they tend to be a lot more sensitive to negatives in the experiences. And therefore, any kind of pain point, whether it's lines or rude employees or dirty restrooms, all of those things tend to be amplified greater today than they were even a few years ago. And I think it's because of the level of stress we're feeling in our lives before we're able to take the vacation. Employee empowerment is also another benefit in that you're able to get real-time information on what's working and what's not working for customers. And most research indicates that employees absolutely positively want to do a great job. They want to be good stewards. They want to be able to solve customer problems quickly and efficiently, but they need insights, they need information to help them give the most appropriate response. So this helps also improve employee loyalty, and certainly the better knowledge of the brand improves the service that employees are able to give. And not surprisingly, it helps improve satisfaction because better understanding of needs and wants and aligning the product to deliver that certainly makes customers happier. It also makes them more likely to be a brand advocate for your destination. You know, word-of-mouth advertising has been important since the beginning of time, but with the advent of social media and the internet, you know, all of that is greatly amplified today, far more than it was, say, 10 years ago. So whenever the visitors come, you know, if they're having a great experience, they're tweeting about it, and if they're having a negative experience, they're even more likely to be tweeting about it or posting on Facebook. But when we have good insights and we're able to deliver the right product and service at the right time to the right customer, it tends to be a better experience, and that tends to get tweeted out to their friends. Also helps you see opportunities from the visitor's perspective and improve the customer experience itself. And then lastly, it's another benefit of a consumer-centric strategy is it helps build a culture of innovation. That is, it helps you differentiate your destination experience from competitors, might help you find more unique experiences that are relevant to your visitors, and enables you to act instead of always reacting because you're getting out in front of it. Here's just a quick summary of some key differences and insights versus traditional market research. In terms of methodology, traditional market research would primarily use quantitative research, maybe a little bit of secondary data for context. But with consumer insights, it's more about using a multiple methods like ethnography or qualitative. It includes quantitative trends information. It's just a more holistic process. In traditional market research, the role of the research provider is really more of a service provider, and that you've got a problem, I'll solve it, but not an ongoing partner. Whereas a consumer insight specialist is more of an ongoing thought partner that doesn't sit on the other side of the desk. They sit right shoulder to shoulder with you, helping to identify the problems as they come up, help you identify growth opportunities before competitors do. The deliverables from traditional market research tend to be the findings from each study, somewhat in a silo. So every time you do a study, you kind of start over from scratch. Whereas in consumer insights, it tends to be more business recommendations, where one study leads to another study leads to another study, but they're all connected using the information and insights from one to stand on its shoulders to then go learn new and deeper insights from other studies. As a result, the primary focus of traditional market research tends to be looking backward. It's historical. It's a measurement. Consumer insights does that as well. It just includes all of those things and then also looks forward. It explores the needs of customers, and more importantly, it helps to explain why consumers are acting as they do. So ways of working, traditional market research tends to be project-driven, whereas insights is more business-driven. Reports in traditional research tend to be more quantitative, very comprehensive. They tend to be the big, boring, thick things. In consumer insights, try to make them more concise, more focused, more storytelling. Certainly all of the information that you would have in the quantitative is there if you need to do a deep dive, but it's not necessarily served up on the front end. It's more about getting the information to the decision maker quicker so that they don't have to spend an hour waiting through the whole report. In traditional market research, the stakeholders tended to be the marketing director and possibly the president and CEO. In consumer insights, pretty much all stakeholders are involved because we're all in marketing, because we are all helping build the brand and serve the customer, and therefore we all benefit from having insights that enable us to do our job better and serve the customer better. And then lastly, in traditional research, senior management largely uninvolved because it was project related. Whereas in consumer insights, their senior management is actively seeking insights for the business issues that they tackle, and as a result, the chief marketing officer is becoming more and more important in modern organizations. Some of our key takeaways from today's session is the world's changing, and that old paradigms that we've used for a long time often don't work as well as they used to. Traditional market research is good. Unfortunately, in the world that we find ourselves today, good just may not be good enough because our competitors are constantly looking for new insights to try to steal our travelers away from us. We need to dig deeper to truly understand our visitors' needs and wants. Why are they visiting? What causes them to get up off the sofa and come to visit us versus a competitor that may only be an hour and a half away? Consumer insights provide a more comprehensive approach that does involve multiple methodologies to help better understand what makes the customers tick. It's far bigger than a different demographic profile. It's far bigger than being able to describe customers. It's more about understanding why they make the choices they make. It's more into their preferences and what's really important to them, what causes them to get up in the morning. Once you understand a person in that manner, you have a much better chance of predicting how they would react to a new product going into your destination or to an ad campaign. Better understanding facilitates better predictions, and that's really what it's all about. It's trying to get in front of our visitors so that we can offer the best destination and the best marketing best marketing messages to compel the largest number of customers to visit us each year. And that, my friends, is our webinar.
Thank you,
Mike, I don't know,
Jerry.
Can we open it up for questions?
Yeah, I think we have time for one or two. I'd like to kick it off. If any of you guys have questions, you can just type them into the little chat window there and I'll read them. But I'd like to start by bringing up digital ethnography again.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, and basically when you outlined that, it was an opportunity for consumers to share their entire buying experience with the service provider, and that was a window into their minds, into their decision-making process. I see an overlap there with the social experience, because I know from personal experience that I like to put YouTube videos online of my unboxing of new gadgets that I buy or new parts that I'm attaching to my bicycle, and I like to be able to put that online and share that with other people. To what degree does industry have an opportunity there to go out and find people who are already giving you that information without them being prompted?
I think that may be the biggest opportunity, because if you already have customers that are already doing that and uploading it, for decision makers, it's just a matter of finding those or encouraging them to do it so that you can watch the videos and learn from what they're telling you. In a way, it's like social listening. It's finding those YouTube videos that are either about your destination or about your attraction or restaurant or hotel or what have you, and watching it to try to get insights that you wouldn't have otherwise. Reading reports is good, but when you can actually live the experience with the customer as they walk through the process, like checking in at the front desk, it inevitably gives you insights about services, about words and phrases that could or should be used, helps you in training of employees, helps you build messages because you start to understand more about what they're going through when they make the purchase. So I think if we can harness that kind of like we would social listening and watch those videos, just like we might read the words, we have the same opportunity to learn and grow.
All right, next question is from my counterpart, Brian London, and he would like to know what you think, how much DMOs should be spending on research as a percentage of our budgets.
Wow, great question. And from client to client, it varies pretty dramatically. I don't know that I have a percentage that I can tell you off the top of my head, because we very seldom. I've got several clients that I actually know what their percent is, but it also tends to go all over the board. And frankly, even if you had a percent that you were focused on, just by the nature of either launching new campaigns or having budget cuts, it tends to never stay in any one spot. So the reality is, I think it should be more mission driven, and that is, what is your objective overall for the DMO? What's your list of objectives? What are your strategies for getting there? And then finding the roles that research plays. And so my guess is some years, when you're trying to launch a new campaign or you're getting into new media, you probably have to heavy up on research those years. I don't know whether that's 6, 7, 8%, or I don't know where that would fall, Brian. But what I do know is that there are some years you probably need to heavy up on research to help you accomplish your objectives, and then other years, if you're just maintaining, you just need to make sure that you're staying in contact with your consumers, that you're measuring what's working and what's not, so that you can tweak it. But certainly a maintenance budget would be a lot different than a launch budget.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have a more specific answer there.
Yeah, I hear you. We battle over my budget every year, so I hear you. What are your thoughts on the traditional visitor guide?
I love the traditional visitor guide. I think the problem is the traditional visitor guide is used in a much different way than it was 10 years ago. In that 10 years ago, before everyone did all their travel research online, you had to have a visitor's guide, because that's how you were going to effectively compete against other destinations in the consideration set. That's not true today. Typically, by the time they order a visitor's guide today, they've already made the decision they're coming to your destination. So it's not about competing with others at this point. Typically, the motivation for the visitor's guide today, when they're ordered, is more they have a fear of missing out. They want to make sure that all of the different things that they may want to do, that they'll be able to do. And then also there's this other segment, tends to be a little bit older, in that they want something to hold on to. They want something tangible to bring with them to the market while they're there, so they don't overlook something. But that's a lot different than it was 10 years ago. But that, I believe, is how come, for years we saw a gradual decline of the number of requests for a visitor's guide. But certainly for the clients we work with, that's tended to level out the last few years. And I believe it's because there's still a demand. It's just the demand, the need from people that are ordering them is very different than the need that drove it quite a few years back. So I still think they serve an incredibly important purpose. I just think for each destination, you need to understand who the user is, how are they using it, and that may lead you to organize it differently or have different messages in the visitor's guide.
Kind of in the same vein, I mean, we use the visitor guide to send the message, but and its use is evolving, like you just mentioned. It has have research methodologies like traditional focus groups and telephone, or do you see them going away, or do you see them evolving the same way?
I don't see them going away. Telephone is certainly going the way of the visitor's guide, but there are still some studies that greatly benefit from an ongoing two-way conversation where there's give and take. And so depending on the need of the specific study, I don't see that going away anytime soon. Certainly to the traditional focus group, we actively still use traditional groups, and certainly if you need someone to touch, feel, smell some aspect of a product, the only way to do that still is going to be do it in person. So I don't see either one going away. I don't see any methodologies that we've used for a long time completely going away. This is more additive. It's more about having a larger toolbox to choose from. And you may only use a tool once every 2 or 3 years, but it still stays in the toolbox. It's just there's a lot of different ways of accomplishing things, and now it's just a matter of what's our objective and what's the most efficient way of learning and reaching that customer. So I think it's more adding tools than taking away.
Okay. Last question from Tom Van Heining. Are traditional economic data like direct tourism and travel jobs, payrolls, tourism and travel expenditures by visitors, taxes, and so on, are they still important for DMO?
They are for very pragmatic reasons, and that is somewhere we all report to someone, and they're making decisions about whether we're going to get funded or not funded. And I still believe the best way to educate people outside our industry is those very kind of economic impact assessments. It's still right now the best way of measuring, is it working or is it not. But there are new ones coming down the pike. Certainly other industries have used the heck out of a net promoter score, and we started using a net promoter score as a measurement about 3 years ago. And I've never found anything that aligns more closely with variances in economic impact and visitation and what have you than that score. So in time, is it possible there'll be other things that will replace it? Maybe, but I think for the foreseeable future, legislatures are still going to want to know how many people come, how many jobs did it support, and how much money it is, because for the foreseeable future, that really is the bottom line.
Excellent. All right, well, I would just like to thank everybody who is on the call for attending. And Jerry, with your permission, I'd like to send the deck sheet of this presentation out to all of the attendees.
Absolutely.
So that they can have a look at it in the future. But thank you very much for your time. And if any of you guys have any questions for me, you can email me directly, and I'd be glad to work with you. So thank you very much, everybody.